Hi, and welcome to Up in the Air. This is the first of many episodes to come involving the aviation world. In 8 minutes or less, I will break down each week's top events and stories in aerospace. Whether your interest is in the commercial, space, or military sector, by 8 minutes from now, you'll have more than enough to talk about with your fellow aero nerds. In this week's episode, we'll be looking at a couple current day topics. How are airliners expecting to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic? How long will it take to get back to pre-pandemic travel volume? In the midst of this unusual time, a race for electric aircraft and alternative methods of travel and delivery have begun to pick up pace. And in the military sector, is the infamous U-2 spy plane of the Cold War making a full return to service? COVID-19 is taking an enormous toll on the entire world at the moment, and the aviation world is perhaps one of the most affected industries by this crisis. The fact remains that this is aviation's most disastrous industrial crisis in its history, and cash-starved airliner operators are purchasing aircraft in far less volume both currently and projected into the future. The world's two biggest commercial aircraft manufacturers, Boeing and Airbus, have both slashed their jet output, with Boeing foreseeing over 2,000 fewer narrow and wide-body aircraft deliveries over the next 5 years, and Airbus announcing overall aircraft output decreasing by over a third. Compared to this time last year, passenger volume is down over 95%. All in all, tens of millions of jobs dependent on air transport, manufacturing, research, and production are in jeopardy. The international airline industry has been hit particularly hard, with some airline operators, such as China's Southern and Eastern airliners, falling by 20% or more. With the recent passage of the $2 trillion CARES Act in the United States, allotting over $60 billion for payroll support, cargo airliners and contractors, along with multiple EU nations such as Sweden, Belgium, France, and Italy passing their own stimulus and aid packages. What kind of difference will this make? Will the airline industry ever recover? Well, the short answer is yes, it will. Some companies and operators will go out of business as a result of this crisis, but overall, the industry will survive as COVID-19 runs its course. But the long-term ramifications of the crisis are potentially tremendous. Starting with the business side of aviation, as COVID-19 has shown many that much work can be accomplished from home, and meetings can be held via various video conferencing applications such as Zoom and Skype, the business travel side of aviation is in jeopardy. Many companies already have shelved entirely the idea of regular business travel, with the joys of video conferencing and lucrative premium cabins on long-haul flights likely to diminish, at least for the time being. Secondly, from an environmental viewpoint, coronavirus has meant a bigger instant fall in emissions than any green campaigner could have ever dared dream. The Earth is healthier, and many want to see it stay that way. This, along with the already diminishing industry need for the huge wide-body jumbo jets, has put the future of aircraft such as the behemoth Airbus A380 and Boeing 747 at significant risk. I'll make a separate video in the next week or so dedicated to this topic, but the fact is, newer and more advanced and efficient narrow-body aircraft, such as the A320neo family of aircraft, produce fewer emissions overall, cram fewer people into one flight, are far cheaper for airlines and airports to operate, as special gates at airports have to be built for aircraft such as the 747 and A380, and can fly further and further distances, slowly diminishing the argument that long-haul international flights can be accomplished only by these large jumbo jets. Finally, this leads us into the next topic of this video, the race for alternative sources of air travel and delivery, namely electric aircraft. While the world of electric aircraft is really still in its infancy, its future is inevitable. So far, the list of truly functional aircraft which rely primarily on a source aside from the traditional internal combustion engine are far and few between. Aside from small multi-copter UAVs incapable of a significant payload, there are fewer than a dozen aerial vehicles capable of carrying an actual human on board under production. And nearly all of these are gliders, meaning that sustained flight via electric power still has not come into fruition. Without going into too much detail, as we will cover this with more depth in the future, the main problem for electric motors is the size and weight of the batteries needed to power them. these batteries would weigh many times more than their gas-powered cousins to achieve the same power. Not exactly an ideal scenario for something you want to get in the air. Nevertheless, with many prototypes in the works, it's projected that the first small electric-powered air taxis will hit the skies perhaps as early as the end of 2020. Programs such as the Air Race E, which as its name suggests, is aiming for an all-electric airplane race with exciting action-packed wingtip-to-wingtip circuit racing around an aerial oval track, which by the way personally sounds absolutely awesome, are partnering up with large multinational companies such as Airbus to ultimately allow electric and hybrid aircraft to make their mark on the aviation world, spawning a new field of aerial technology, which with any luck will hopefully evolve into a new form of travel. And now, finally, let's take a dive into the military world for a bit of an update on the venerable U-2. No, not that U-2. We're talking about the Lockheed U2, the famous reconnaissance aircraft flown by the United States Air Force and the CIA to provide all-weather, day and night, high-altitude reconnaissance. Although perhaps most famous for the 1960 shootdown of a CIA-operated U-2 piloted by Gary Powers over the Soviet Union during the peak of the Cold War, the U-2 has undoubtedly been indispensable in its various uses throughout the past 60 years in electronic sensor research, satellite calibration, intelligence gathering, and even scientific research. In modern times, the U-2 has continued to fly reconnaissance missions for the US in the Second Persian Gulf War and Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan. And now, over a half-century since its introduction, the aircraft will be modernized for the new battlefield, receiving a series of avionics upgrades. The new aircraft, designated now as the U-2S, will include a more intuitive cockpit design, electronic warfare system, and signals intelligence capabilities. But most importantly, a new mission computer would be fitted, designed to the Air Force's Open Mission System Standard, or simply OMS. The new OMS, named the Enterprise Mission Computer 2, enables aircraft to integrate at various security levels with systems across air, space, sea, land, and cyber domains. For anyone who is familiar with Link 16, this is a relatively similar system. In simpler terms, the new mission computer will allow the U-2S and its pilot to communicate with a broader audience to get a better view of the battlefield. The U-2 is the fifth oldest aircraft still in active service with the United States military, and in a world where UAVs are quickly taking over the long-range endurance reconnaissance role, the U-2 still holds its ground as relevant. I hope you've enjoyed this week's rundown. As this is my first video in the channel, I encourage my new viewers to provide any feedback and advice, and to bring forward any topics that you would like covered in the future. If you'd like to hear more, please subscribe to the channel for more weekly updates, as well as in-depth videos involving more specific topics in the aerospace world. Until next week, stay safe. This is Up in the Air, out.